this one will also be sealed with a wax seal. And let me then show you what is inside this tin. So inside the tin we have some rickrack, we have some of the stamped imagery. This is all the stamped imagery you're going to need for the project that I'll be showing you. Puffins, seahorse, and different starfish. And then you have, pop that there, and you have 13 pieces of fabric. We've got some that are shiny, got some quilter's cotton. So we've got different types. We've also got some sort of cheesecloth, got tie-dye, some sort of thicker fabric, canvasy type fabric, some tea stained. I put a bit of cream in because of course we need the cream for the sand, some pieces of cotton, some sort of thinnish twill type material, and some hand dyed cheesecloth. You also get a larger piece, so if you want to lay these out and do one big image you can. I'll explain that in a minute. We've also got this florist's ribbon. You've got embroidery threads, there's a metre of each and there's 5 colours. Get a little, what I call a treasure bag full of beads and sequins and shells. And then you get the piece of card that you can concertina in. So all you would need is your scissors, your needle and your sticky back tape. So yeah, let me just zoom out a little bit, show you. So if you don't want to do a little booklet, what you could do with these pieces is lay them on the base fabric and just do one sort of mini quilt if you like. So we could lay these all on wherever you want them in different directions. Put the net over it as well, and all sorts of things. I'm just randomly dropping these down just to give you an idea. You can cut them up smaller, obviously. Probably won't put that one on. Just to give you an idea, and then you could pop these on wherever you want them. Put some net down. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean, this is really badly laid out, but it gives you an idea. If you want to, you can do a bigger piece. Put that there. You can cut some of these apart. You can fussy cut around them, and then you can slow stitch and do whatever you really feel you'd like to do. I've got this here. I don't know, put that there. The beads and sequins, or as I say, you can assemble it into a little mini seascape there, and this concertina book. Hi, this one is the Coast kit. I've already cut, this is some of the base fabrics, or I've used some of the pre-cuts that are in the tin, and I've trimmed up my stamping, and some of them I've actually fussy cut around. This one you can see I've actually fussy cut that one out. And this is the sort of layout that I would consider. So I've just got the base fabric, I've got the piece of printing here, I then just found a piece of the muslin and I've just shredded it, and you can really distress it and shred it by pulling it apart. So I've done that with the we call it butter muslin, or cheese, some people call it cheesecloth, it's not the same in Britain. And then the florist's ribbon I've cut diagonally to fit there. Here I've just again got the base fabric, that's the larger piece of fabric that's in the tin, and cut it up into the pieces, cut out my sample, There's a piece of that left over from doing the little seascape, and I'll explain the seascape separately. There's a little bit of the rick-rack for that one. This is the florist ribbon just trimmed down into the little strips. Very simple, this one. This one is very similar to the puffin one. So you can use the same sort of layout on, you know, some of them, repeat the layout. This is one of the pieces of print. I've got a couple of shells going on there. I might put some French knots or something else to go on there. The buttons are on this one, so it's just the base fabric, the florist, the printing, the buttons, very simple. As I said, this one I've fussy cut out and overlaid it on these two here with some rick-rack and a spare bit of the tea dyed material. So that's how you can collage. I prefer to pre-plan like this a little bit, so I've got an idea of what I'm doing. You can choose how to do it how you want to do it. So I'm going to crack on now with the stitching. Right, in the pack comes a sort of a blue, a dark teal, a light teal, a white and a sandy colour embroidery floss. And I've already split off a single, this is just the light teal. You can choose whichever colours you want to use. And I think I might use that as a chain stitch around my little crab. Now you could choose to pin it down. You could perhaps use like a solid stick type glue to just hold it down for you. I say I'm going to do a running stitch. I know I was going to do a chain stitch, but I think I've changed my mind. Not enough room. I'm just going to do a basic running stitch. So keeping it simple, you can choose whichever stitch you want. I mean, I've gone for a nice contrasting colour so it shows up. You may want to choose something that sort of blends in a bit better, perhaps a sandy tone. Depends what look you want to achieve. So nice and simple. I'll come back and show you how I'm getting on. Now what I've done here is I've just tacked on a darker teal satin fabric, and then I've overlaid it with the lighter teal. And it's just tack, so what I might do is remove the tacking stitches if I can see them, so I shall remove them once I've stitched the other layer on. Now for this I'm just going to do a tiny little pin stitch near the edge. So it's small on the top and a little bit bigger underneath. I'm just going to put that there. And you could do I might do a fancy stitch over that. Now with these stamped images, you may choose to actually stitch them. It won't stop you adding more stitchery to it. I'm going to leave mine as stamped images. I'm going to put a little holding stitch in there on the end. What I'm going to do, I might do a fan stitch on these. So I go over to the top and then to the side and come back in. I don't know if you can see what I've done. So I've done that in clusters of 3, hopefully my camera's picking that up. I might then put a little pearl just there, as if it's a pearl on the wave. Yeah, a little pearl. Go do the cluster of 3 again. Like a fan shape. And then another pearl, and then I'm going to repeat the fan, a pearl and the fan. And I'll show you it again when I'm done. He's finished now. So I've got these like fan stitches here. I've got the pearls there. But it could be that I actually used white. It doesn't matter what colour thread you use. I could do some white running stitch underneath here. It could sort of indicate the surf. Still might do that, we'll see. So that's how you can crack on with one. So that's that one. This one, I'm going to do a very simple pin stitch around the outside edge because I don't want it to show so much. And so what I've chosen is I've actually chosen the sort of tanny coloured thread so you can't see it so much. And then I'm just going to put a little pearl bead in each corner. When I sew this down, I'm going to use the blues, and again I'm going to just do little pin stitches so I can't see it. What I mean by a pin stitch or a prick stitch, people call it different names. I won't start in the corner because that's where I want the pearl bead to go. You just come up and then you do the tiniest little stitch that just about hits a warp or a weft, and you can barely see it. I'm going to do a couple of them along this edge, and that's the same technique that I will use on the muslin and on that little bit of net I had here a minute ago. I'll show you when I've finished. Right, so I've finished. I don't know if you can see that. I've done my little pin stitch around the outside edge. I've put some little pearl-like beads, the tealy pearl-like beads. I've actually done the little clear beads as if they're like bubbles. This I've done some little tiny stitches, but it's quite big on the back. Look, big stitches on the back, but tiny little stitches on the front. And I'm just going to put that over the top layer. So it's about layering. So I should put that on. And then what I could do, I could put some more beads on the top of this area. Mind you, it might not show. I'm tempted to put sequins on, but I don't know whether it will be too bling. I think that's personal taste. So if I just show you how sequins might look, just get a few out. I think depending on their colour, they might not even show, unless I put some dark ones on. The dark one. I might just put it in the net actually, that area here, it's quite nice. But as I say, anything you do, it's personal choice. You can have some seed stitches in here. You can do so much, and you could use all the different colour threads of seed stitch. Yeah, you could do just loads of stuff. So I'm going to carry on with this, and I'll show you how I've got on. I'm bringing this up closer to you so you can see that I've also added some sequins to give it a little bit more bling. I mean, as I say, it's entirely up to you if you want to keep it nice and simple. Now what I mean by simple is that's already been stitched. It's been pin stitched like the other one, but it looks clean and tidy, as it were, I suppose, in comparison. I could still add French knots and stitches and fancy to-dos all on it, but as I say, it's personal choice. I could even stitch over the shell and turn it into a nice white shell, but I'm going to leave it as it is and crack on with the others. So I hope from this you get an idea of how I'm building these up. As I say, I've completed 3, and say this one is very similar to the starfish. This one I should probably do very similar in style to this. What I will need to do is work out how to sew the shells on. And all you do is you basically sew it on like a button. You come up, you go through the hole and back down again like a button. So I would keep it simple. Use running stitch, pin stitch. You know, I could do some nice fancy cross stitch down there. But it's entirely up to you how complicated you want to make it. Right, here's the tin. Now I've already finished the little bits that go on here, and I'll show you that in a minute. So that will be going in there like that, and then that will pop out. Right, I think I'll probably do it that way. That will pop out like that. Yep. So for instance, that will be on that page there, and you'll see him when the book opens up, but I'm going to show you that in a minute. So put that to one side. What I'm going to work on is what goes on this side of the tin. So I've already cut a piece of interfacing, an iron-on interfacing that will fit this area. Slightly a bit too big, but then I'll trim it down. I've got a little paper template that I've got, and I'll trim it down to fit. There's my paper template. And I'm going to do a little seascape on this. So I'm going to double check which way, that's it, my actual glue is. And the glue, this is glue side up. I can see it because the glue is slightly shiny. And I've cut some of those pieces of fabric that are in the box. I've cut parts of it off. So I like this bit here because I think that will make a great sky. So I'm going to pop that across there. Now a seascape is invariably dark on the horizon, so I've taken the darkest of the fabrics and the horizon is going to be straight, and then I've just got little strips of bits of waste really, and I'm just going to place them on where I want them to go. They don't have to be straight, these can be all just all over the place, all higgledy-piggledy. Popping that on next. Now the thing is, it's always handy to have a pin on hand, because you know what's going to happen. They will move just as you get them where you want them. It's also a good idea to have a bit of grease-proof paper handy, because then when you come to press it, any exposed glue, because already I can see exposed glue, so I'm just pulling that down to cover up the exposed glue, bringing that up. I hope my head's not in this picture. Now I think, alright. I think what I want to do now is put the sand on, because the water overlaps the sand. So I'm going to put the sand on next. That's my sand. I'm going to have a bit of white surf coming onto the thing. And then I think I might have this one. And then I'm going to have, but I mean you can put whatever you like down, to be honest. Anything you like. whatever suits you. So I'm going to iron that now. I would recommend a bit of greaseproof paper. Greaseproof paper with baking paper, for those people who don't know what greaseproof is. Baking paper, baking parchment, anything like that. Any silicone papers that will release but not get stuck to the iron. If it moves, you just reposition it and then re-iron it. Like that. And hopefully you can see that already I've got a little bit of a seascape going on. Now, what I could do, that's still shifting about, let me just trim that off. What I could also do is, in the packs were these little threads, and you could lie them on, a little bit of sparkle with that particular one. You can lie them on and then you can couch and hand stitch them down get some more interesting textures. Okay, so couching is where you just sew over it, or you could just do like a cantha stitch where you're just doing simple running stitch backwards and forwards. Yeah, absolutely, don't, you know, easy peasy. And then that'll be trimmed down and that will fit in the tin. I'll do a bit of stitching and then I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so I've stuck them all on. They're all stuck. I can then sew them with the clear thread. And by sewing them, if you can actually sew through both sides, you can pretty much catch both sides quite evenly, quite nicely. And because it's clear thread, you can't see the stitches. There's no point me demonstrating that because if I can barely see what I'm doing, you certainly won't see under the camera. So that is what I'll do next. I've put loads of sticky back tape on the back edge. This is one thing you've got to remember when you're constructing it. You must remember that one edge will be stuck into the box. Well, I say that, you might want to take yours out, but mine, I want it to stay stuck in the box and it just concertinas out like that. So that will be stuck in once I've done my reinforced stitches, and then I will put my landscape in there. Here I'm adding the embroidered detail to the little seascape. Here I've already, I don't know if you can see that just there, and here, I've already couched on the sort of the thicker sort of cordy yarn. It's quite a thick sort of, for couching, a couching yarn. I've started to put little rice stitch or seed stitch down here, and all that is you just randomly sew in different directions, little tiny little stitches, and as long as you keep going in different directions, that's what you're looking to aim for. So as you can see, you might need to turn it round every now and again to help you make sure you don't get them all going in the same direction. And it's just to give that area a little bit of texture. And what I've done, I've actually created 3 little zones. So a zone here, a little zone here, and then a zone in this corner. Don't want it all over, not really. I mean, you can if you want to. You can, as I say, with any of this part of project, you can stitch as much or as little as you want. It's your project. This one's going to end up joining up with that little bit. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to show you how I couch the cord on. Now to couch the cord on, I cut myself a length a little bit longer than I want it to be. Then I'm just putting a little stitch at the beginning to hold it down. Make sure you don't go too close to the edge in so much as you're going to be trimming this up. You don't want to be cutting off your knots. And then I'm just going over stitching every now and again. And then what I might do is just push it with my thumb to get like a ripple. And then hold it, then just stitch it down. I'm bringing it up. And the distance you can see is only up to the next sort of curve or bend. I'm just holding it down. I don't want to pucker up. Hang on, let me just bring that up a bit better. That's better. And you can get different effects depending on how big you do your wave. So that one's quite a slow wave, that's a more ripply wave, and that's a very tight wave because I wanted it to look like a froth, the sort of foam as it hits the beach. So I'm happy with that there. Now what I could do is break this all up a bit more with some stitching. So I could put some stitching through there, a slightly darker blue. So I'm just doing simple running stitch. Oops, I picked up that white by accident. Let me just pull that back out. And that will break up that one. You can see I've done other stitching as well on the top. So I'll pop some stitching through there. Might even go back and put some more stitching in. Again, it just adds to the little ripples. Stagger them. You can also change the size of them. Some small, some big, well, big gaps. You know, don't make it too even looking. Sometimes I like to keep sewing until I've run out of thread. And then finally I'm putting little French knots at the front here, and that's sort of to add to that sort of the foam as it hits the beach. Oops. So I'm coming up, holding the thread and wrapping the needle round about 2 or 3 times, and then I'm going back down. Oops. And I'm not pulling it too tight because I want them to be all loose and messy. So I'll show you again. I'm coming up, holding the thread, doing the 3 stitches, going back down. I'm just sort of scattering them around. Some I'm just doing 2, some are 2 and 3. Once I've got all my stitching on that I want to add, I might put some white through here. I'll trim it up. So this is the tin. I've emptied it of its contents. I've now trimmed up the seascape, and that will be stuck in there with some double-sided tape. I've already put the double-sided tape on this. You can see I've actually put loads on because I don't really want it to get pulled out. So that can be positioned in. So you say this is the hardest bit, is getting it in straight. I'm hoping that's gone in lovely. So that will pop out like that. And I'll put some tape on this and stick that in there. And then I shall show you some still shots of how that looks, because that will be stood up. So I shall show you those shots. Thank you for joining me. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye for now.